The Kudzuki Network presents
Rise Up Single Mom. Hey moms, and welcome to the Rise Up Single Mom podcast with your host Clarissa Joy. We are empowered by the Kudzuki Network, and yet another topic for today, moms, especially for you. So thanks for tuning in. Our special guest for this episode is Miss Shantae Mosby. She is the creator and extraordinaire of the Morning After podcast. Welcome, Shantae.
Hi, Clarissa.
Hey, girl. Shantae's side story is also happens to be one of my best friends in the whole wide world.
Yes.
We may have graduated high school together.
We did.
Doing life together, 10 plus years. You know, what can I say?
You know, it's awesome. It's an awesome connection. I'm so thankful to have it.
Yay. Well, thanks for coming on. And moms, you know, all of our episodes are completely different. Some are fun and games. This is a more of a serious nature topic, but one that I felt was a conversation that needs to be had, especially for those ladies out there that may not feel that this is a topic that some may not have even discussed with others to this point. So today's topic, we're going to be dealing with the loss of a child. So today's affirmation for any lady, any woman that's listening to this podcast that has experienced child loss, say it with me. I will make the best decisions for my journey. Okay? I will make the best decisions for my journey. And we were so intentional about that affirmation for this episode because this is really an active choice, an active decision for ladies to make that are in this situation. So we'll start off, Shantae, with tell us a bit about the Morning After podcast. And congratulations.
Thank you. I know you guys don't know much about me, but those that do, to know me is to know that I don't like talking a lot. I am a singer, right? I'm a performer. Usually my friends, they're the ones that love to, talk and engage with people. And after our loss, I decided that I wanted to talk. I didn't want to only journal. I didn't want to do a lot of the classic things that were suggested to me. Afterwards, I decided I want to do something different, something that would stretch me, which I know absolutely will, already has after just a few episodes. So I am looking forward to that. So I decided to start the podcast, the Morning After podcast, which is out and available. And I'm just really excited to be able to share not only my story from my perspective, the story from my husband Mike's perspective, and then be able to speak to others about loss, life after loss. We are only 5 months postpartum, so all of it's still very new to me. And so starting it as early as I did, which I chose to do it June 28th. And that was her original, Micah is my daughter's name, her original due date. Yes. And so it made sense, when I was thinking, when am I going to launch? And I looked at my calendar and the date, obviously was, earmarked. And I was like, okay, this is the best time to do it. So I launched on June 28th, just in honor of what would have been her day of arrival. So super excited about the journey. Not sure where it's going to take me, not sure the type of guest I'm going to have. I'm just taking it literally one episode at a time, doing something that I normally wouldn't do, which is just be free and open for the process.
Well, can I just say, wow, like she kind of dulled it down for y'all, but Shantae talking on a podcast about her for real life.
And feelings.
And this topic, OMG, girl. I'm just so proud of you, Shantae.
Oh, thank you.
Of course, unfortunate the reason that, for the podcast existing now, but you taking this avenue in which you say, this is a part of your healing.
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. I would. when my most recent episode, I kind of talked through our birth story, which I'll share, some today. And I didn't know, I didn't plan it. I didn't write anything out like I normally would for episodes. I didn't interview anyone. So it was just me in my living room with my iPad and microphone. And I just kind of just talked,
Got it out.
Right. And shared how I felt. There were some tears. There were, moments where I could laugh about some things in the experience, just kind of looking back. And, just all the things that I remember, So I look forward to, of course, being able to kind of expand on the story as I remember things. So I didn't remember everything at that moment, and afterwards, as you know, when you do recordings, you're like,
oh man,
I missed this, and so I was just thinking about different parts of the story that would have been awesome to add. But I was like, you have a podcast, so whenever you're ready to part
Plenty
2,
of more episodes.
3, 4, whatever, and those that will listen and get whatever they can from it.
Wow. Okay. And then you mentioned that the podcast is also not just from your perspective, but the perspective of your husband as well. So what was his thoughts about you starting the podcast?
my husband, if you look up the hashtag Make Moves That Count, he is Mr. Make Moves That Count.
Yes,
so
he
anything that has anything to do with taking action, making steps or anything, he is all for it.
Yes.
He was shocked, as you can imagine.
As we all were.
Right. So anytime he is speaking somewhere or is doing a video, or if he's going live, or if he's on any type of social media, I'm always ducking and dodging, from the camera, from my voice being heard, all those things. And so for me to come to him and say, hey, babe, I think I want to do a podcast, he was like elated. What can I do? What equipment do you need? I mean, he loves that kind of thing. So he was super excited to be able to, get me set up for my very first episode. And then now I'm kind of learning and, getting my kind of travel equipment going so that I can take this show on the road. So yeah, he's super, super supportive.
Awesome. That is just amazing, Shantae. And for all that don't know, I am Michael Love's TT.
Yes, you are.
Officially.
Yes, you are.
So, Shantae, again, understand the sensitivity of the topic. So what parts you're comfortable with, share with us a bit about the story, the journey that you and Mike have experienced.
Okay. Well, Mike and I were married on January 18th, 2020. And of course, right after that, the pandemic, right? Everything shut down.
Yep.
A few months later, we started to work towards planning a family. I am now 39. So at the time, they always say, oh, don't worry about time. But, in the back of our minds, we're thinking, all right, the clock is ticking. What are you doing?
Right.
And so we decided to go ahead and do what we needed to do to start a family. And so we did. And for my husband, as much as possible. And so
He like, I'm all in.
It was no issue for him. So we did. And so we found out we were pregnant later in the year, and super excited, with the due date, of course, in June. And things went as normal as I guess a pregnancy would.
Okay.
Like I've mentioned in an episode of our podcast, was, for me, it was difficult, like when it came to nausea and, tiredness and things like that. But that was normal, right?
Sure.
During that time, I contracted COVID, which was not an awesome time,
Right.
but I was fine.
Okay.
Micah was fine. So appointments were great. All the extra scans that you get because of your geriatric pregnancy, as I use my air quotes,
Right.
for our age.
40 is the new 30. What you talking about?
Absolutely. And so all those things were great, so you have that nervous energy about those kind of things, and those things were great. And so I was super thankful about that. Of course, at some point we learned the sex of Micah, and so that was even more exciting. And just trying to enjoy the journey. Something I had never experienced before, and things were going well. And so our 20-week scan we had, and for those that don't know, you scan the anatomy of the baby, check all the parts, make sure everything is where it's supposed to be, and everything was great. And so that was leading up to the weekend of Valentine's weekend. And so I had been feeling super tired. I'd gone to the store. The Saturday. Oh, I know it was actually Valentine's Day. So I had gone to the store, Walgreens, my favorite quick run-in store, and I'd gone to get a card from Mike and just something cute. And then I went to get something for what do you call it? I felt like I was constipated, so I went to get like a stool softener that was doctor approved. So I went in literally for those two items. I usually do pretty terrible in scrolling down the aisles or strolling down the aisles, rather. It depends on if I'm on my phone or not. Down the aisles, and I just couldn't. I didn't have the energy. I was just like, what is going on? Just let me get out of the store. So I left the store. I had gotten all cute that day, took a selfie, which I really didn't do a lot during the pregnancy, but I felt cute that day. And I was like, it's Valentine's weekend. Let me make sure I look like something for Mike. And so I was, got myself all cute and dolled up and decided to go home. And I just wasn't feeling my best. And at that point, I started feeling pressure in my butt. And I was like, okay, I felt this before when I've been constipated. Maybe that's what it is. And then by the time Mike had gotten home that night, because we didn't go out on Valentine's, he took his daughter out because we had gone out the night before. And so by the time he had gotten home, I decided I wasn't going to, I just wanted to lay down. I just didn't have the energy to do anything. He went and got some other stuff from me, milk of magnesia, since the stool softener hadn't worked at that point. Pain. At that time, I did not know that I was experiencing contractions. Again, haven't experienced it before. And at that point, I decided to go to the bathroom because I was trying to go to the bathroom. And when I wiped, there was blood. And my entire pregnancy, I had not experienced any type of spotting, anything like that. So it was scary. And you talk to the groups, of course you're in all the Facebook groups, and you look at previous posts or you make a post on yourself, is this normal, blah, blah, blah. And some people are like, well, it can be, if you're active or if you've had sex recently or something like that. And I was like, okay, but I'm like, kind of been doing that the entire pregnancy, haven't experienced it before. And so I was like, okay, kept trying to go to the bathroom, no luck, and eventually the pains kept getting worse. By that time, it was midnight. A little after midnight, and I was like, okay, I gotta go. Like, we gotta go to the hospital. And so we packed up, went to the hospital. Now at this point, it's in the middle of an ice storm, so the streets are completely white. I'm in pain every 3 or 4 minutes, if not even that long. Got to the hospital, super quiet. There was not even activity in labor and delivery. They were like, yeah, people are here, but no one's really ready to have their babies yet. So I was like, cool, just making small talk. I had to be wheeled through the hospital because I was in too much pain to walk. Shortly after, the doctor just kind of took my word, and said, oh, okay, well, you're probably constipated or you're bleeding because you've had sex. And my husband, of course, wasn't able to be with me.
Because of COVID.
Yeah, so he was in the waiting room. Yeah, and I was just in too much pain to, I feel like, truly advocate for myself like I really needed to. And so they eventually discharged me, no vaginal check, no anything. The machine that they hooked me up to said, oh, well, you're not having any contractions, even though I literally couldn't speak every 3 or 4 minutes, like to the nurses. The doctor literally never checked. I mean, I was undressed and prepared for checks, but and they told me to just go to Walgreens, get a suppository, and I asked them for one since, I didn't want to leave with that same pain. And they gave me that. I went to the restroom about 15 minutes later. There was more blood at this point, enough to where after I wiped a few times, it wasn't like, oh, a little spotting. Let me, it was that and kind of mucus-like. And I took a picture of it, showed the nurse, which she said, oh, it's fine. It's likely because of the straining, trying to go to the bathroom, and because of the combination of that and possibly having sex the night before. So I said, okay, again, just didn't know. And we got home, still was in pain. It continued. It took the milk of magnesia like they suggested. Tried to go to the restroom once or twice. After that, I had a gush, feeling like a gush of, liquid. And before my brain could imagine or know what it was, the next push, she was here.
Wow.
Like, I delivered her in the toilet in my house. So it was, super, super traumatic and traumatizing is the best word I can use. for that experience. So
Cannot imagine.
Yeah. So
Let's take a quick pause. Moms, hang on. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Rise Up Single Mom podcast with Clarissa Joy, empowered by Kazukian.
3.
What do we feel about submitting? Is that a thing? That word seems to be very triggering.
B.
Submitting in the way that it was intended is perfectly fine.
C.
I'm a fan of submit ye one to another.
3BC. 3 Black Chicks on the Kazukian Network.
Welcome back, moms, and you are listening to the Rise Up Single Mom podcast with Clarissa Joy. Our guest today, Shantae Mosby, just shared her story, right, of loss. And I know there are other women out there, maybe even moms out there that have a similar story or have been down this road before, a similar road. So I just want to say thank you again, Shantae, for being so transparent and opening up, for ladies that probably have not heard a similar story that they've experienced from somebody else. So thank you for that.
you're welcome.
So picking back up, right? So this has transpired. I mean, the first thing that comes to my brain is how on earth do you process such a traumatic experience?
I felt like for a moment I couldn't. I felt like just like I was able to kind of share the story with you, that's kind of where I was. The very next day I called my doctor and, let her know what had happened. And she says, "You're so stoic." It's like I obviously know what's going on. I'm at the hospital. I'm still hooked up to IVs and all sorts of things, and it's like my brain didn't want to process, what was happening. I didn't want to see her that first night, so I don't think I was wanting to allow myself to kind of process what that was, and I think it took coming home. I felt like I just got to get myself together. My body's all out of whack. I'm feeling. Let me get that part done. Mike,
But
you deal with.
what does that even mean?
Yeah,
Get
I don't
myself
know.
together.
I don't know. I mean, I didn't know. I felt like, okay, well, going to the bathroom was painful. My breasts were tender and in a lot of pain because milk was coming in and there was nowhere, for it to go. So all
you're
these
engorged.
things. Yeah, it was awful. I have pictures of me with cabbage wrapped around them because it was the only thing that was cool.
I always say engorgement is worse than labor pain.
Yeah, it was bad, and I felt like it caused fevers and all kinds of awful things. And so, processing in my brain, I said, okay, Shantae, let's heal physically first.
Okay.
And so I can't say it was right or wrong. It was just my process. I was like,
is
okay,
your journey.
Yeah, heal, get yourself together. And my husband is very emotional and I let him have it. And I kind of was light about it and was like, I'm just going to let you deal with all the emotions right now. And I'm just going to try to get myself, to where I can do simple things like walk back and forth to the bathroom.
Right.
Just like literally one step at a time. That's kind of where I was with it. So I started there physically. And then honestly, not until my 6-week checkup did I start to really open the book to what recovery really was.
Okay.
I reached out to a counselor at that point. I called my OB and they recommended they recommended a counseling group, and so I reached out and then I started counseling at that point. So
how did you feel about reaching out for counseling? Because I know that is a big step. It sounds, small when we just, lightly, gingerly talk about it. But for a lot of ladies, they're like, whoa, do I want to go through that step or to that step of counseling? How did you get there?
It felt weird because, as you know, typically when you go to a counselor, they want you to do things like share your feelings, talk about how this made you feel. And you're thinking on the other end, I just lost my baby. Like, what do you mean? How do I feel? I'm devastated. Do you really want me to repeat those things to you again? So I kind of had that preconceived notion before the services began. And, but I said, okay, Shantae, just be open to the process. Go ahead. I know it needs to happen.
Okay.
So I went along with it. The first 2 were difficult. I think she was asking a lot of background questions, and in my mind I was thinking, what is all
Why?
of this?
Why?
Or being a people leader in my career, you know, we've had so many trainings and so many things about coaching people, and when you have you know, and how those look like, and I felt like I was in a coaching conversation for myself.
On the other side
right?
of the
And so
table.
I could almost sense what she was going to ask before she asked it, and you know, that was weird, but you know, I powered through it. And maybe about the third session, you know, there were breakthroughs. There might have been a few tears. There might have been, you know, some things that I was able to release that I may have been a little too starchy to eventually, you know, to do initially.
Okay. So you mentioned therapy, and when I think of therapy, that is a resource. Are there other resources that you have heard of, right, as you have been researching after your own experience?
Yeah, so while I was in the hospital, I immediately removed myself from all the groups I had, you know, joined, all the, you know, expected mother groups and all that kind of stuff, and expected mothers over 35 and all the, you know, all the
yes.
groups. Like I had overdone it, okay? And so it did that same, you know, kind of energy. I went and found similar groups, you know, mothers who experienced loss, stillbirth groups, you know, miscarriage. And so I kind of went there first because it was the first thing. I'm used to using social media. I enjoy it. It's enough where everyone's experienced the same thing or something similar, but they don't know me. So I felt like, oh, I can say more, or
And
I
you're
can
still
be more
behind the
open.
curtain.
And I'm still behind the curtain,
Yeah.
right? Which is, you know, what I do so well. And so that's where I went with it initially.
Okay.
My mom was in the home with me, of course, with Mike, and I talked to her a little bit, but to know my mom, though, she's not going to ask a lot of questions, so she's not going to do a lot of poking and, you know, how you
Right.
feeling, what do you need, you know, she's just going to kind of be Johnny on the spot, you know, when you need her. She's not going to just really dig. And so
She's not going to Clarissa you.
she's not going to Clarissa, and truth be told, she's not going to mic me, you know,
Yes,
I mean, Mike, I thought,
Yeah, he
you
does
know,
the
apparently
same.
my best friends were the warm up to Mike because he doesn't let a facial expression go by without, like,
I
what's
love
that?
it.
Are you good? What's going on? And so, you know, a bunch of that, and of course, you know, it was reciprocated because he was in the same boat I was.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Okay, wow. And so we've talked about resources, and I just want to put a pin here because ladies that have found themselves going through this experience, I think it's worth saying out loud, it's okay to tap into resources.
Yeah.
Whether those resources are, you know, therapy, are social media groups, or they're even live support groups, or whether it's a community-based or faith-based, or whatever, you know, avenue it may be. I think that is so critical, right, to get to tap into that. So thank you for sharing that. And on the emotional side of it, you kind of touched on this. How do you think you have cycled through that range of emotions, or what range, or maybe I should just ask, what range of emotions have you experienced?
Initially, of course, there was sadness, lots of teary nights and days and mornings and all of that. And then there was time of just when I was just still, you know, just kind of there. And then there were times when I was angry, you know, times when I kind of blamed myself, you know, what didn't I do right? You know, should I have done more of this? Should I have asked more questions? Should I have, you know, advocated for myself more? You know, all those kind of things. And then as I started to get out of the house more, then it was like a new type of cycle, going back to work, seeing women in strollers. And then, you know, kind of like when you buy a car and you never see the car you bought
And as
until
soon
you
as
buy
you
it.
buy it.
Everybody has one, right? And so
Right.
there was this stroller that I really wanted that I had never seen, never heard of. I mean, everywhere. I could not leave. And I was like, and then, so there
There's
were
the
times
stroller.
when,
You
I
see
mean,
it.
everywhere. And so there's not maybe not a day that goes by that I don't, if I'm out, that I don't see it. And so it's better now, but you know, there are times when it just kind of,
Triggers.
yeah, or I was my
Yeah.
first time in a store and I was like, oh, okay, what is this? Okay, you know, and I was able to share it with my counselor and say, okay, maybe I'm not ready to go back to work quite yet because I never know who I'm going to come in contact with. And, you know, so yeah, the cycle of it continues. I never know. I had a family member that had a recent loss of their child, and I was thrown back into this emotion, like, you know, knowing what that felt like, and, you know, and still not knowing what it feels like, you know?
Right. And so it was
you're
like
still
empathy times 1,000.
Yeah.
because you've been there.
Yeah, and even when you've been there, you're still sensitive because their journey is different.
Sure.
How they want to be supported is different, and so still being apprehensive on how to reach out. You know, what do you need? What do you don't you need? A pull a Clarissa and just pull up.
Well,
I loved it, but everyone's different. So
I'm like, I didn't ask her twice. I'm just headed over. Knock, knock, knock. Or look, text your husband. I am 10 minutes away.
10 minutes out, and so it's just one of those things, and you appreciate it after the fact. You just can't think on it during that time. For sure.
Sure. So, and thinking about other women that may be in this position or recently going through this position, and as we talked about before the recording started, it's not really ever totally getting over it, and not that anyone's even asking ladies that have gone through this to get over it, because that's a life, right? Yeah. That's a part of you as well. So what advice or what thoughts or comments would you share with other ladies that have experienced loss?
Be kind to people. Always say be kind to others, but be kind to yourself.
Okay.
Remember that it's not your fault. I was told that a lot. I wasn't trying to hear it at the time, and then I had lunch with an old friend from elementary. Like we went to church together. We were very young, and she had experienced similar loss, and she kept telling me yesterday, it wasn't your fault. It's not your fault. And so just kind of remembering those things, if it's every day, if it's every hour, remember that everyone doesn't get it. They don't get it. And so sometimes people will say things that are not meant to be insensitive, but maybe insensitive. When are y'all gonna try again? Oh, and my grandmother is 80 plus. And
oh gosh.
First thing out of her mouth was, when I was up to getting out, you're not gonna try again, are you? You're not gonna do,
and that's the last question you want to hear.
Oh, grandma, what?
Really?
And so, but having that understanding that some people just don't get it, and so
it's no ill will.
It's right, and so. I'm not saying not to be sensitive, because again, it's your journey, but just remembering that sometimes people just don't get it. So just being patient with yourself, patient with others, and like your affirmation said, I mean, it's you make the decision on what's best for you. And
I know you now are a plant mom, so tell us a bit about that and any other tips and tricks you've picked up in coping.
Yes. So as you can imagine, I had the desire to nurture.
Sure.
I had one poor little peace lily that I had gotten when I was redecorating my office in the beginning of the pandemic. And when I tell you, I had that thing on death's door back and forth, and it was sad. Yes. Oh my gosh. And I was just like, I'm just whatever. I'm over it. And so after the loss, it was on its way out. And then at that point, I can't let it go. I can't let it go. So I did all the things, read all the things, and flushed it with water. Made sure I had Lisa, our mutual friend. She was like, you can do this, and you do okay. So it helped me kind of bring it back to life. And after that, it was just still looking kind of ugh. And I must have pouted enough where Mike was like, okay, we're going to the store to get you another plant. Okay. And so that was plant number 2. About 30 plants later.
30?
Yeah, I have about 30. And I had 20 maybe 2 months ago. And then my sister-in-law, she purchased, she bought me 3 in a pack, 3 in a cute little, and it's bad. Wow. It's bad, but I love it. I love being able to take care.
What has been the impact of being a plant mom?
Clean air, fresh air. But just knowing that, this is something that I have to take care of. They're beautiful, so aesthetically they're pleasing, in the home. So it's been great. The dogs, don't mess with them. They know better. So I just enjoy having them around, looking at them, feeling like I've accomplished something by keeping all the ones that everyone says in the different, because of course I'm in a lot of plant groups too, that say,
you just love community.
I love community. I love groups. And so they'll say, oh, I can't keep this one alive. And I'm thinking, mine's alive. I can't keep blah, blah, blah. Mine's doing just fine, So, just those kind of things, you just kind of bring, little joys. It's awesome.
Absolutely. I love that. And as you stated, just want to reiterate the affirmation that we started out with, ladies, and it's, I will make the best decisions for my journey.
I love it.
Thank you so much, Shantae, for sharing your experience, your journey, your healing, and coping with us. And I just know, all right, this podcast is Rise Up Single Mom, but there are actually some single moms that have experienced loss, right? And then there's some women that just love the podcast that aren't single moms that have experienced loss. Thank you. That I know also will benefit by what you've shared today. So thank you so much for being a guest on our show.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So moms, women, thank you so much for tuning in to Rise Up Single Mom Podcast with your host, Clarissa Joy. We are empowered by the Kazukian Network. And don't forget to find us on social media. Go to Instagram, Facebook, search for Rise Up Single Mom. And you also can find us at kazukian.com. Thanks so much for listening. And we cannot wait to share the next episode with you.
Rise Up Single Mom.
Directed, produced, and distributed by Kazukian.